So on the 6th of July 1967, civil war breaks out in Nigeria. Now, 5 weeks after its secession from Nigeria, the breakaway Republic of Biafra is attacked by Nigerian government forces on the 6th of July 1967. So let's go back 7 years and see why. So in 1960, Nigeria gained independence from Britain. The new country was formed from a colonial amalgamation of different regions with different majority ethnic groups and religions, including the Yoruba. Now, the Yoruba were mostly dominant in the south, and they have this African spiritualist identity, a little bit Christian, but mostly very traditional African-esque people. Now, there were the Igbo to the east and the southeast. Now, these were the more Western, more democratic, more very westernized people of the southeast. And of course, they had a lot of oil. Remember that word, oil. And of course, we have the House of Fulani, which was in the north. And they were pretty much Muslim. Yeah, House of Fulani, pretty much Muslim. So 6 years later, a set of back-to-back military coups installed an Igbo leader, who was then removed by a counter-coup organized largely by officers from the House of Fulani-dominated north. In the chaos that followed, thousands of Igbos living in the north were massacred, prompting tens of thousands of Igbos to flee to the east, where their people were mostly dominant and the dominant ethnic group. The Igbos doubted that Nigeria's oppressive and repressive military government and regime will allow them to develop or even survive. So on the 30th of May 1967, Lieutenant Colonel Udumigwu Ojukwu and other non-Igbo representatives of the area established the Republic of Biafra, comprising several Nigerian states into one singular Biafran Republic. Now, after diplomatic efforts by Nigeria failed to reunite the country, the war between Nigeria and the Biafran Republic broke out on the 6th of July 1967. Ojukwu's forces made some initial advances and actually held their ground, but Nigeria's superior military strength and diplomatic support gradually reduced the Biafran territory to, well, nothing really. But the state lost its oil fields, its main source of revenue, and without the funds to import food or medicine, an estimated 1 million of its civilians or people died as a result of severe malnutrition and diseases that could have been prevented or even helped due to not having or a lack of medication. So on the 11th of January 1970, Nigerian forces captured the provincial capital of Uriri, one of the last Biafran strongholds and defensive quarters, and Ojukwu was forced to flee to the Ivory Coast, or the Côte d'Ivoire, and 4 days later, Biafra surrendered to Nigeria. And with that being said, that was the end of a short but brutal war. 3 years of civil war in Nigeria. Alright, so with that being said, that's pretty much the end of the video. Dog did not catch me today. But with that being said, wait a minute, is that him? Well, that being said, we're gonna wrap up with this interesting but a bit absurdist but interesting fact during the Cold War. The Biafran War, or the Nigerian Civil War as it's known, had some interesting alliances, and we're gonna see them. Alright, so the dog was a bit much. We love our dogs on the channel, but the dog was a bit much. So, like I said, we're gonna look at the belligerents and see how crazy the Biafran War was, because the Biafran War wasn't just like a microcosm, normal everyday African civil war. Like I said, the Nigerian government had a lot of diplomatic support, and the diplomatic support was pretty interesting, and Biafra was as well. So going down the list, we're looking at Nigeria. Nigeria was obviously supported with the help of Egypt, which was a very pan-Africanist nation at the time, really under Abdul Amir Nasser. Very African. No way, guys. That's crazy. That's actually crazy. Alright, he's done. So Nigeria has Egypt in its corner, the United Kingdom, the Soviet Union, and Ethiopia before it was Marxist-Leninist. Of course, there was the United States, of course, and Canada. Now, Biafra is an interesting story because Biafra has China due to the Sino-Soviet split, Tanzania under Nyerere, Zambia, Gabon, Côte d'Ivoire or the Ivory Coast, and this would be because the covert support was from France, because the enemy of my enemy is my friend, and the French-English rivalry still had to be done. Because even though after the Entente Cordiale, you gotta have a little spiciness in the relationship, you know? So, England versus France, eternal rivalry to this day. There was also Portugal, but this was under the administration of the Estado Novo, or Antonio de Salazar. No, I think Salazar is dead at this point. But this is in the larger context of the Portuguese colonial war, which was going on. I think Nigeria was going to be closer to Guinea-Bissau and Angola. So it's a midway point. So to keep a stable Nigeria means that Nigeria could possibly help in that as well. But still, I mean, you don't want more African states breaking away when you're fighting a colonial war to keep African states in line, right? So there's that. Israel is an interesting one, but mostly for oil because it's surrounded by Middle Eastern partners that have the three no's in place. So no oil for Israel. So trying to keep a interesting client state alive to get oil. South Africa, interesting one, but makes sense in the grand scheme of things geopolitically. You want an African nation because, oh yeah, this is another key thing. Nigeria was seen as so dominant, right? Like, if Nigeria was actually to get its shit together, Nigeria would be seen as the new Addis Ababa, right? Nigeria would be seen as this beacon of hope for Africa. So to support Biafra, this is a very nihilistic thing. To support Biafra, it means that Nigeria would be weak. And of course, if Nigeria is weak, Nigeria can't be the new Addis Ababa, right? The new African head, right? So, makes sense covertly. And also, in the midst of the Cold War, Ojukwu was being supported by China, so, kind of makes sense. And of course, Rhodesia, kind of the same thing. Kind of made Africa a little weak. But, there's also other geopolitical things for it, but more nihilistically speaking, it's to make them look, a bit impotent, right? But, yeah. Also, the African Union stepped in, like I said, but South Africa has a bit more interesting motives than just keeping black people down, but it's kind of weird in a sense. But like I said, it's a weird war with weird alliances, so there you go. Everybody has their own competing interests, but if you're on the side of Biafra, the number one cause of supporting Biafra is oil, so let's just keep it at that. The number one supporting cause of Biafra is oil. But with that being said, I hope you learned something. I hope you enjoyed. And until next time, this is an interesting geopolitical breakdown and history video of Biafra. So yeah, kind of a little bit of a ramble. Kind of know what I'm saying, but not really. But hope you enjoyed, and I hope you learned something. And until next time, bye bye, y'all.